Hey CW Bio, Mr. Kennedy here with part 2 of the lecture series on the biosphere or ecology. And in this section, we're going to take a look right out of the gate at some more interactions between organisms. This is called symbiosis. Symbiosis is the relationship that exists between species that, well, for lack of a better way to put it, needs to be described as close and permanent. Okay, a lot of people use the word symbiotic relationship, wrong. They tried to talk about best friends being symbiotic or something like that. And folks, I hate to break it to you, you might be best friends, but you don't have a symbiotic relationship. You just can't. To have a symbiotic relationship, you have to have a close, permanent relationship with, rule number 3, a different species. So unless your best friend's your dog and you somehow can't be separated from your dog or you'll die, then it's not a symbiotic relationship. That's just how it works, okay? Now, if you want to think about true symbiotic relationships, let's talk about, I don't know, how about the bacteria that lives in your gut? I know that's disgusting, but it's true. Like, you got bacteria that lives in your gut that helps digest your food. And folks, if it wasn't there, yeah, you'd be really sick and probably die. Okay, so that's a symbiotic relationship because that bacteria is not human and you can't live without it. There are 3 specific types of symbiotic relationships that I want you to have down in your notes. We're going to start with mutualism. Mutualism is a symbiotic relationship in which both species benefit from the interaction. So if you look close at this picture, we got my buddy, the, grouper fish here, or sea bass, hanging out with this, what looks like a little bit of a lip piercing going on there. That is what's called a cleaner rasp. That cleaner rasp is going around this fish's gills and mouth and body and picking off parasites. It's a mutualistic relationship because A, the big fish, well, it gets rid of parasites, and B, the little fish, it doesn't have to go hunt for food. The food just shows up. How cool is that? Then there's a commensalistic relationship. This is a symbiotic relationship where one species benefits, and I'll be honest with you, I just think the other species doesn't care if you're there or not. So, there's moss growing on this tree. Clearly, the moss would not be able to survive if it had to compete with all the other plant life that you see in that picture for sunlight and water and all that at ground level. By growing up in the tree holds the moss above all of that competition. The moss gets a much better chance at survival. Does the tree get anything out of it? No. Not unless, I don't know, somehow one tree is jealous of another tree's adornment of moss. Not likely, okay? Then there's parasitism. Parasitism is an interaction where one species benefits, but the other one is harmed. This one's pretty easy, self-explanatory. I mean, if you just talk about all these creepy crawlies that make you sick and go bump in the night, here's a great example, a tapeworm. Tapeworms are great examples of parasites. So at the end of the day, they live or get inside of you by you eating undercooked beef or pork, and they live in your intestines, and your body does all the work in digesting your food, and then they just hang on in there and steal what they want for survival. They usually don't kill their host because that'd be kind of stupid. It's like burning your own house down. If you burn your own house down, where are you going to live, right? So they want you to be just sort of struggling with whatever illness they create as long as possible, because that's how they're able to spread their eggs to the next house. Predator-prey type relationship is not necessarily a parasitism, but a good example of kind of where a predator is a consumer, and then they, seek out other organisms and eat the same way that a parasite might. Predation is found in all ecosystems and includes organisms that eat plants and animals, right? The animals that are predators, well, that eat these prey items, they have all kinds of adaptations that make them better at what they're doing. And then the prey items, they have all kinds of adaptations to maybe help them not get eaten, okay? And it's kind of like this arms race, and they go back and forth. And so too is the case of a parasite's relationship with its host. All right, so we're going to shift gears here and now look at like some ecosystem characteristics related to energy flow through the ecosystem. So, how organisms obtain energy. This is one of the most important characteristics that we can study within an ecosystem. One of the most important characteristics in like understanding this energy flow is the species niche, how it like goes about making a living. Ecologists trace the flow of energy through communities to discover nutritional relationships between organisms, and they label organisms with terms I hope you remember from, like, I don't know, fifth grade, like autotroph, heterotroph, producer, consumer. Ring a bell? I hope so, because these are terms that we're going to use here as we look at food webs and food chains and pyramids and stuff like that. Okay. So you're an autotroph if, you can make your own food through photosynthesis. Only plants and their relatives can do this. And, if it weren't for them doing this, none of us would be here. The ultimate source for energy for life on this planet is the sun, but plants are the only ones that can capture it and do anything with it. You go out in the sun, you can't fill your belly by standing out in the sun. You just get a sunburn. That's all there is to it. So autotrophs, these are organisms that use light energy or energy stored in chemical compounds to basically make their own food. Now, that being said, autotrophy, it just makes food. They're not done. Like, they still have to have another process to get the energy out of their food. Remember our videos on cell respiration and photosynthesis? That's what I'm talking about. So if you're an autotroph, you're going to make your own food, but you still have to do cell respiration to get the energy out of it. So the whole idea here is just that you don't eat. You absorb the sun's energy and make your own food. All right, heterotrophs. That's you and me, folks. These are organisms that cannot make their own food. I know you're telling me you're a great cook and I should try your chocolate chip cookies. Well, I would love to try your chocolate chip cookies one day. But right now, hey, this isn't about like baking. This is about like, can you make your own food from the sun or something? And the answer is no, right? Yeah, you can follow a recipe, but we're talking about two totally different things. To be a heterotroph means you got to eat. You got to take in organic compounds so that your body has an energy source. Heterotrophs include organisms that feed on only autotrophs, organisms that feed only on other heterotrophs, and organisms that can eat whatever they want. You might remember those as herbivores, carnivores, and omnivores. Those are terms you got to know, okay? So, heterotrophs that display a variety of feeding relationships. Here it is, a heterotroph that feeds only on plants, that's an herbivore. And that's my buddy, giraffe. All right, next one. Some heterotrophs eat only other heterotrophs, and like lions, they eat only other animals, and those are carnivores, like walking around saying, where's the beef? Okay? And then there's scavengers. Scavengers can eat things, basically meat products that have already died. Like, they're not really good at killing stuff on their own. They want the like juicy leftovers, of a carcass that's like 3 days old. Okay. And then some organisms like bacteria and fungus, they're decomposers. So they take like what's left after the scavengers are done, and they literally break things down into their raw organic and inorganic building blocks, right? Decomposers are super, super important because they take stuff that nobody else wants and they recycle it. If it weren't for them, like, this planet would have run out of carbon a really, really long time ago. Our Earth is a closed system. There's only so much carbon to go around, and carbon gets locked up in all living things. So if it weren't for decomposers to recycle it and put it back out there so that it can move back through a food chain, we'd be out of carbon. Okay? All right. So flow of matter and energy in ecosystems. Now we got to talk about how all these things that I just defined for you are interconnected. So if we're talking about matter and energy flow in an ecosystem, we have to start with an autotroph. Remember, autotrophs are going to capture the sun's energy, and they're going to convert it into a food item. And when matter and energy flow from them through the rest of the ecosystem, it really is a function or a game of who eats whom. And we map that out in a thing called a food chain. A food chain is a simple model that scientists use to show how matter and energy flow through the ecosystem as one organism is eaten by another, right? The most important thing to remember in a food chain is, yeah, there's going to be like names of creatures here and arrows and stuff. But remember, the arrows aren't telling you directly who eats whom. It's telling you the direction of matter and energy flow. So here's a real simple food chain. Berries, mice, black bear. You'll notice there's an arrow pointing from the berries to the mouse and from the mouse to the black bear. So indirectly, we learn who eats whom. Directly, we learn where matter and energy flows. What I'm saying is, if there's an arrow pointing from a berry to a mouse, that's not telling you that berries eat mice and mice somehow eat black bears. That's totally backwards, okay? What that arrow's telling you is that matter and energy flow from the berries to the mouse. When? When does that happen? Well, when the mouse eats the berry. So if you go backwards over that arrow, you learn who eats whom. If you follow the arrows directly, it's all about matter and energy flow. Gotta keep it straight, okay? All right, most food chains consist of 2, 3, or 4 transfers, but no more than that. And the reason for that is because at each energy transfer, like we lose almost all of the energy. Only 10% of the energy available at one level transfers through the food chain as one organism eats another. 10%, that's it. So you can imagine after 4 energy transfers, there's not much energy left, right? If you went to a 5th, to a 6th, like there'd just be so little energy, it couldn't even support life. Where's all that energy go? Where's the other 90% go? Well, you can see here, right? A portion of the energy is given off as heat. And believe me, if I'm a mouse and I eat berries, well, those berries' energy is going to support me, right? And there won't be much energy left by the time the bear eats the mouse. All right. Each organism in a food chain represents a feeding step or a trophic level in the passage of energy and materials. The first order heterotroph, that's an organism that feeds on plants, like the mouse, or in this case, a grasshopper. A second order heterotroph is an organism that feeds on a first order heterotroph. Food chain represents only one possible route for energy and matter movement through an ecosystem. But as you learn more about ecosystems, you'll learn there's lots of possibilities out there for stuff to go left, right, up, down, backwards, forwards, you name it. We call those food webs. A model, right, that shows all the possible feeding relationships at every trophic level, that's a food web. And these can be pretty complicated, okay? This is a sample food web from your textbook from a desert scrub community, and you can see all these arrows pointing to all these different things. So the idea here is, yeah, you get to figure out who eats whom by following arrows backwards, but more importantly, by following arrows forward, where the matter and energy flows. The other thing that you should be able to do with these food webs is answer some pretty basic questions like this. What happens if I come into this food web and I decide, you know what, I don't really like this, like, coyote looking thing right here, this fox looking guy right here. I'm a rancher and I want to raise sheep in the area, and this guy keeps eating all my sheep. So I'm going to actively hunt and kill and remove this guy. He's going to be gone. No more. Okay? Because that's what's best for my farm, for my ranch, and my sheep. Okay? Well, if I take this guy out, what you need to get is that, like, the population of roadrunners might go up, right? The population of these mice might go up, right? Things like that. If the roadrunner population goes up, well, it's going to eat up all the snakes, and the snakes are helping to control the mouse population. The mouse population, or kangaroo rat population down there, is going to skyrocket. That sounds great if you're a kangaroo rat. Well, what do kangaroo rats eat? They eat seeds and stuff. So these guys are going to wipe out all your vegetation because their population is going to be huge. By eliminating this one animal, I could, in effect, destroy the entire ecosystem through a domino effect. Those are the kinds of things that you need to think about when you're thinking about a food web, okay? Now, we can also take information from a food web and change its appearance a little bit. We can present it in pyramid form. An ecological pyramid could show how matter and energy flows through an ecosystem just like a food web can, but this is, triangular in shape, okay? The base of the ecological pyramid represents your autotrophs, and then we go up higher and higher to the pointed little top with maybe like our third order consumer. It looks like this. The pyramid of energy illustrates the amount of available energy decreases at each successive trophic level. So whatever you started with at the bottom, if you follow the arrows going up the side there, you can see only 10% transfers to each level. The bottom is your autotrophs, then you got your herbivores, then you got your carnivores, and that's the end of your pyramid, okay? The total energy transfer from one trophic level to the next is, again, only about 10% because organisms fail to capture all the energy in what they eat, right? And like I said, some of it's used in that individual trophic level before it's passed on. Some of the transferred energy enters the environment as heat. The total amount of energy will remain the same because first law of thermodynamics, well, energy can't be created nor destroyed. It simply changes state. Next is a pyramid of numbers. Pyramid of numbers shows the numbers of individuals in a population that each trophic level or each level of the pyramid can support. You're going to find that you can support more autotrophs than any other level because they're getting sun energy directly, like solar energy directly from the sun. So you're going to need lots of them, and you'll be able to support lots of them as long as the sun is shining. Well, in this case, we've got 3,000 units of energy down there with our plants, and it's only going to support about 300 grasshoppers because grasshoppers have to eat the plants to survive. And eventually we get down to a fox where like 3,000 grass plants are only going to support a single fox. Why is this important to us? Well, as an ecologist, if we know this information, we can go out and do field studies and we can look and go, do I have 3,000 grass plants to support my one fox, or are humans doing something to mess the ecosystem up? And maybe I only have 2,000 grass plants. That means my fox is going to be in trouble, right? Or maybe I have 6,000 grass plants and now I can support 2 foxes instead of just 1. Biomass works on the same thread as a pyramid of numbers. Now, instead of just like how many individuals can I support, we're going to be looking at the dry weight of those individuals, okay? So the biomass is a literal measure of weight of those individuals at a respective feeding or trophic level. All right, ladies and gents, that is a quick look at all of the ecosystem stuff that you need to know from Chapter 3. So I hope you've enjoyed these 2 videos. I know it's been fun for me to talk about, and I look forward to sharing more ecology with you as we get into chapters 4 and 5, and like, it's great stuff. All right, I'm Mr. Kennedy, and I will see you next time.